And welcome to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. And happy Friday. How are you feeling on Friday? I'm still not used to not having a countdown.
Yeah, the countdown.
It's rough.
I mean, it's Friday, so
Yes,
it's how bad. I'm a little bit pumped. A, because it's Friday.
Yes.
B, there's a lot of good college football tomorrow.
Yes.
And C, I started out my day with one of those simple wintertime pleasures. When it's cold out because it's wintertime.
Okay.
And you're low on gas.
Okay.
And you don't want to get gas because it's cold out.
Okay.
But then when you do, and you get back in the car and you see the tank is full, it is a really, really good feeling.
I don't disagree with that. I had the opposite one this morning. My tank was almost empty, so I knew I was going to have to pump gas.
But did you yet?
I didn't yet. No.
See, mine was, and I was like, I don't really want to. I'm just a little under quarter tank. I could get through the day, but I was like, I got to do it today. I got to do it tomorrow. I got to do it. So I'm just going to do it and get it over with. And now I feel good. My thought
process was it was going to be warmer later today than it was earlier today.
Yeah, and I get
might
that.
Be wrong though. By the time I fill it up, if the sun's down, I could be completely wrong.
Did you ever, I've read this somewhere lately, that it's one of the great faux pas of life when it's kind of, we're driving home. We're like, I'll just get gas tomorrow on the way to work.
Every time. I'm the worst at that.
Because
I'll just get it tomorrow.
The next day, you're always like, why didn't I just do this last night? I don't have time for this today. I'm already running behind. I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this.
You used the term and it stayed with me. You said simple winter pleasures. Mm-hmm. SWPs. Do you have what are some SWPs?
Oh my God.
Can you give examples?
There are few just simple feelings in the world that are as pleasurable as when the heater kicks on in your car.
When it finally starts blowing the hot air?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, if you're one of these people that has a remote and you have to start the car and let it run for 10 minutes before you get in, I'm not that guy. Okay. I get in it, I suffer through, and I don't turn anything on until I see the needle on the heat thing go up on my dash.
Okay.
And then I blast it. Oh, that is.
Here's the real question. Are you a window scraper or are you a wait 5 minutes for it to kick in and then just hit the wiper?
While I'm driving or before I start?
Before you have to start the car. So clearly you're a window scraper. I can already tell by this conversation.
You don't have to start the car to scrape the windows.
You're missing the point of this question. There are people who scrape their window.
Right.
Okay. Then there are people who go, I will wait the 5 minutes. I will start my car. I'll start blowing the air onto the window.
I know.
And then I will just start the wipers on and I will kill the 5 minutes by staying on my phone or listening to the radio or whatever it is they do.
I'm a scraper.
I could
if
tell.
Need be.
Because you made me sound like an alien trying to explain that to you.
I am also a guy who's like, okay, I have this little window at the bottom. I can drive like this.
You magoo it.
Yes,
you do.
I have magooed it a lot. I can remember my brother and I driving to school because when he was a senior, I was a freshman.
Okay.
So we had that 1 year of going to high school together. And I can remember us going with the windows down on the side and checking out the window enough just to see until the defrost kicked in.
Okay.
Because sometimes you just don't have time to scrape.
So I agree with you on your simple winter pleasures. I don't know if I have a lot of them.
There's also just in life, and obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, depending on if you're a skier or not, but most people like summer more than they like winter because, all the things. But there is a simple beauty to the shortness of the days, the kind of the hunker down, watch a movie. There's something about, it's 7:30 when you pop in a movie in the summer.
There's a coziness to the winter season.
When the sun's still up and it's 7:30, it's still really bright. It's kind of hard to hunker down like it is in winter. And
you feel guilty, you feel lazy, whereas the winter kind of allows you to do away with that.
Winter brings an acceptable lazy that summer doesn't allow for. Summer is a guilty lazy. Winter is it's okay to be lazy.
I think like the SWPs, I'm going to say that all day now, simple winter pleasures. I think for some people, the very obvious, like whether it's hot cocoa or whatever, those simple things you get to do that you maybe don't get to do.
Yeah, you don't. Nobody drinks hot chocolate in July.
No, right. But for like, I don't know. Like, I'm not really a hot cocoa person. Like, I'm not a skier. Like, I'm not.
Right.
A lot of those simple winter pleasures for me kind of go over my head. Like, I'm not. So when you said SWPs, I was kind of like, I don't really have a lot of them.
Now, as a guy, I'm not a get under a blanket on the couch guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I have sweatpants that I only ever wear in the winter.
Okay.
There's a fuzziness, coziness, soft, warm to what, in the rest of the year, it's just like shorts and t-shirt and you plop down on the couch.
Sure.
Now there's, there are the people when the blankets are around or whatever. You're a blanket guy?
I almost always have a blanket when I sit down.
Are you like
couch.
Linus? Do you have,
A little bit.
while you have a blanket, do you have a thumb in your mouth?
I don't.
Okay.
You know what's funny? Because and then we got to dive into the news. I had cousins and I know people who had like the thing, whether it was a blanket or a teddy bear or anything like that. I had not like, I didn't have a thing. However, now I don't have like a thing, but a lot of those things now, like if I'm sitting and I have like a book or my laptop, I like a pillow. If I'm laying down watching TV, I like to have a blanket. Like, it's weird how like I had none of those things.
You feel like you missed out.
Maybe, I don't know what it is, but now I'm a huge blanket guy. Anybody who's not a huge blanket person, I'm not like chastising you, but explain to me the negative side of the blanket. Like, why not have the blanket? There's no downside. It's only
I'm not. I'm
upside
just because there's not really one around, and I don't know.
Okay.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
But I've always said this too. It is much more the enjoyment level when you're really hot and cooling down, whether it be an air-conditioned room or a pool or something, is not nearly as pleasurable as when you're really cold and you warm up.
Interesting. I would have to think about that because
like when you're cold and you finally get inside and you're just like, that is a heck of a lot better than when you're really hot and you walk in. It's
interesting because the short term, when it is hot and you walk into an air-conditioned room, I mean, that initial blast is fantastic.
Oh, don't get me wrong.
I might debate you on that. It's close. I've never thought about it, but it's a good question. Good question.
No, there are many simple winter pleasures that you can't replicate in the summer.
No, I don't disagree with that at all. An update on a story that you and I had covered earlier and that we've been covering at NorthcentralPa.com for quite some time. There was an update that PennDOT has actually sent a letter to the city of Williamsport. You can find a lot of this on NorthcentralPa.com. I have up here the NorthcentralPa.com story and the WNEP story. So essentially, the city of Williamsport's finances are still under investigation by the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office. But just recently, PennDOT issued a letter to the city asking River Valley Transit, the city's bus system, to cease what the state considers misuse of taxpayer-funded transportation money. The two big changes here.
Cease blowing $11 million. That's basically what they said.
They are $11 million in debt. We didn't want to harp on this, but the two main takeaways that I took from this, and you tended to agree with me, the first one is the actual letter itself being sent. PennDOT, I don't want to say PennDOT's not, it almost feels as if PennDOT wants to make sure that they had sent something because maybe they hadn't sent something before. But now that the Attorney General's office is looking into it, and now that the ball is kind of rolling on it, to me, the letter seems more like a formality than anything else.
Yeah, I feel for PennDOT in this because PennDOT gives the money out to these municipalities and expects the municipalities to use it. And now all of a sudden, PennDOT's kind of getting called to the witness stand to a degree to be like, you gave Williamsport money and they blew $11 million of it on stuff that, and PennDOT's like, well, how are we supposed to know? Like, how many municipalities does PennDOT cover? We can't watchdog over all of them. They're responsible for what they did. So now Williamsport has made more headache for PennDOT. That PennDOT had nothing, they didn't do anything wrong.
Yes. And then the other part that came from this is the $11 million, which again, the transit system should never be in debt because you get the funds from PennDOT and those are the funds that are allotted to you. So there should never actually be a negative in the book. However, they are about $11 million in debt right now. The new thing that came to light is Mayor Slaughter quoted, if that $11 million was misappropriated and spent on ineligible uses, then yes, that money would have to be paid back to PennDOT or the FTA. So my question to you is, I'm curious, is this a lump sum?
Right. How do you pay it back?
Is this something that comes out of the grant every year?
I would suspect they deduct it.
Okay.
Because I'm sure Williamsport doesn't have $11 million laying around.
Exactly.
And if they take it all, if they're like, we're not giving you anything until you're paid up, then that would probably be so detrimental to the region that it causes greater problems. So whatever the budget is, they will probably get, 80% of it or 75% of it or whatever over the next however many years until they've caught up to $11 million. That would be my educated guess, but I don't know.
Yes, because I don't know where you come up with $11 million. So I would assume it's going to have to come out of that yearly, but we'll see. I mean, it sounds like we're going to find out.
Yes.
That's what it sounds like. Another local thing we wanted to touch on as well, high school football games, the state playoffs. We still have, I believe in our coverage area, we still have 3 teams playing. If we missed a team, please comment. But we have Canton is going to play Bishop Guilfoyle tonight at 7 o'clock at Altoona. That is the single A football game. I have relatives, I have in-laws, I have friends that are from Canton. That place is popping. It is insane. Like, it is movie-esque. Like, it is unbelievable how excited that town is about their football.
It is Remember the Titans-ish?
It is Remember the It's radio, Remember the Titans.
Well,
like,
didn't
downtown
Canton
barber
come down?
shop.
Didn't they stomp Loyal Sock? Wasn't it Canton?
I think it was Troy who beat
Loyal
Loyal
Troy
Sock
beat
this
Loyal
year.
Sock.
Yes.
Okay.
And Canton stomped Troy this year.
Because Troy, and Loyal Sock was a good team. Loyal Sock beat Danville, who ended up winning district title.
Sure.
Troy came down to Loyal Sock and just manhandled them and mercy rolled them.
Yes.
And then Canton, in turn, you said, stomped Troy.
Yes.
You have a buddy who is very high on Canton.
Yes. So there's somebody that I know down near the Harrisburg area near Carlisle. They see they work in the sports realm. They see a ton of football. They got to see Canton play. They believe Canton's the best single A team in the state. Now that's high. You have to play the game. You have to win everything else. But he sees a lot of football, and he told me this was before the state playoffs started. He had actually seen the Canton-Troy game, and he walked away and he was like, they're the best single A team I've seen.
So even if he's overhyped a little bit, at least they have a shot. Because you know as well as anyone, you get into state playoffs and sometimes you run into some of these private schools and you're just like, we just can't win this game.
Yeah.
They're that much better than us.
Right.
But taking all this into account, so Canton has a real shot.
Yeah. According to my source
according
from
to your source,
they are legitimate.
And your source is he has no dog in the fight.
No, he was a sports editor. He travels around, does some stuff. So he sees a ton of these games. And the best part too is he sees them from all different parts of the state. So he has a good feel for how they would. So he believes the way Canton flies around, kind of their athleticism. He says, listen, he goes, they're not that far off from what I've seen like across the state in general. In single A, he said they're the favorite.
Now, unfortunately, they are at Altoona.
They're at Altoona, which is, if anybody knows anything about Bishop Guilfoyle, that is their backyard. We actually almost played Bishop Guilfoyle in the state championship last year in basketball.
Oh, is that who lost in the semis?
That's who lost in the semis to Brookville. So they're a very good athletic school. Obviously, they're a Catholic school, nothing against Catholic schools, but obviously they have, in the PIAA, they do have an advantage. They do have an advantage in the PIAA. But so we'll see what happens.
My funny Bishop Guilfoyle story, since I didn't remember who that was, but when you guys were in the state semis last year, you told me, like, who'd you beat in the state semis?
We beat Math Civics and Science.
Okay. And I asked you before, and you're like, no, it's probably a toss-up. Like, it's close. We have a chance. And I said, what's happening out west? And you're like, well, there's this Catholic school. It's playing the public school. If the public school knocks them off, we'll kill the public school. But the Catholic school, like, they're not as good as math, civics, and science, but they're good.
Sure.
So then I said, who won out west? You're like, the public school won.
Yeah.
So that's why when you went into the state finals, I just kept saying, can I tell everyone you're going to kill him?
No,
you're like, please don't
do
say
it.
that.
Please
I was like,
don't do
but you're
that.
going to kill him. And you're like, I know we are, but please don't say it. How about, did you win by 18, 22?
I think we won by 20-ish. But it is the other part of it too, like as a coach, like any coach will tell you this, and really like anybody who's been in their passion long enough, you just see things and you get a feel for it, and you can just, so you know what it should look like and what should happen. But like they are kids and they have to perform. And so it's just so you think you know what's going to happen, but once the game starts, you just don't know. And that's what's been one of the more impressive things about Canton so far is small community up north. Like you just don't know. And they've gone on the road and they just keep doing it. It just seems like nothing's too big for them right now. Like the moment hasn't been, and that's really impressive. When you're a 16, 17-year-old kid.
No, I get it. In our pre-show talks, and as we're talking about stuff that we want to talk about, do we have an angle for this? Should we leave this one alone? All that. Like last year, I was just like, can I just tell him you're going to kill him?
No,
can I just say you're going to kill him? And you're like, please don't. Please don't say it. So anyway, there you go. So
we also
a tough travel. It's a little unfair that Bishop Guilfoyle gets to play in their hometown, but Canton, hopefully they can overcome it. Obviously, Southern Columbia and Northern Lehigh.
They're tonight as well. They're actually in Lehighton. Southern Columbia is coming off of a 62-21. However, Northern Lehigh has yet to have a single-digit game through the bracket, so they're pretty good. Right. They're beating teams by double digits the whole way through.
So, and this isn't quite as good as Southern lost a game this year. They almost lost another game. So, but I would suspect that Southern is the favorite every time they step on the field. At least in the modern era, yeah. And then Jersey Shore, Aliquippa. Do you know, trivia question, do you know who went to Aliquippa?
No, who? Dorset.
Tony Dorsett, Aliquippa High. Nice. Apparently Aliquippa is huge, like physically up front, huge. So Jersey Shore, if you've seen them play, they like to play with tempo. So it's going to be, can the offense stay on the field enough to wear down the big guys from Aliquippa? That will be, it's a style matchup, and whose style wins out, the speed or the size. And but Jersey Shore's been in this situation before. They had a great run last year. So December football, if you're still playing games in December, you're doing something. Yesterday, I just realized this today as we were talking about 32 years ago today is when we won our only December high school football game in Montoursville history. December 2nd, 1989. If you win games in December, you've played a long way.
To be playing football in December is ridiculous. So kudos to everybody that's still going on. We have some funky stories kind of around the country. This one kind of takes the cake. A plumber called into a local radio station. I was telling you this before we came.
I'm not sure I believe all this.
You don't believe all this?
I'm not sure.
So a plumber called into a local radio station. And for those of you who don't know Joel Osteen, I want to say Osteen. Is it Osteen?
It's something like that. Osteen.
Okay.
It's that guy.
Joel Osteen is a televangelist. He has a mega church in Houston. This place is massive. He has been in the news, obviously, for, can I say squirrely things? Like squirrely, is that a good word?
He's rich as can be.
He's rich as can be, but he's been, so for example, when they had the flooding in New Orleans, he wouldn't let people into, they were trying to find places that people could go to. Like they ended up using was it the Astrodome?
The Astrodome.
They ended up using the Astrodome. One of the places they kept trying to use was Joel Osteen's megachurch, and he refused. And then he finally got enough backlash for not letting these people that were being displaced from the flooding use the facility. So then he finally opened up the doors. And so he is somebody who consistently just kind of is always in the background of Texas news.
He's not nearly as holy as he comes off, as he claims himself to be.
I think that's fair to say. So there was a plumber who called into a radio station. His exact quote, he says, there was a loose toilet on the wall. We removed the tile and then we removed the toilet. After I moved some insulation away, about 500 envelopes fell out of the wall and cash began to fall on the floor. So he calls in randomly to the radio station. They're talking about this. He says, it was just like unbelievable the things he was telling us they found in the wall, said George Lindsay, co-host of the Morning Bullpen in Houston. So what they ended up doing was they actually ended up calling the Houston Police Department, and the Houston Police Department says they are still investigating the 7-year-old case involving the disappearance of $600,000. It's unclear how much money the plumber discovered, but the case raises a lot of questions. The megachurch responded. They actually said in a statement, Lakewood Church confirmed that while repair work was being done, an undisclosed amount of cash and checks were found. They said they immediately notified the Houston Police Department, and they were assisting with that investigation to this day still. So it sounds like the story. Yes, the church.
Oh, okay. Now I believe it more.
The church and the Houston Police Department are not.
So here's my question.
Okay.
Why are you? I mean, I'm thinking of John Wick now, where they put it in the floor and he takes the pickaxe and he pounds through the floor to get to the guns. And why do you? It's plastered in the wall.
Not only that, it was behind the insulation and everything.
Yeah, like this is hidden as. Like you can't access this without doing lots of damage.
It almost sounds as if the wall was put in for the money, not the money was hidden in the wall.
Maybe, yeah.
That's what it sounds like. Did that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, don't you just bury the safe in the yard under the doghouse? Isn't that what everyone does? What I don't understand.
Maybe that's old. It's overplayed.
It's been done. They always look now. It's under the doghouse.
This is 500 envelopes at a time where they were saying $600,000 was missing. I just don't know. Here's the other part too. How many people could hide money in the wall of the church? Like, that's a very short list. Like the janitor couldn't hide money. You have to have access to the cash itself. You'd have to have access to the facility at any given time. Like, that's a very short list is the point I'm making. It's not some random churchgoer who was able to pull this off.
No, and how do you? I don't know. Unless the contractors, I don't know.
Can I say this? It also, because you and I have talked about this before. I myself am not religious. I am jealous of people who have a faith. I think it's incredibly strong-willed, the ability to have that. I personally do not right now. Maybe some point in my life something will happen that will change. However, I have vehemently said I don't despise the church. I think churches play a significant role in society. I do not understand how they avoid being taxed. I will never understand that.
Yeah,
This plays into that significantly. I mean, the fact that there's a church that exists where they're just stuffing money in envelopes into the wall and not a single dime gets taxed, I can't wrap my head around it.
Well, one of the things that society is seeing is churches are getting bigger and bigger because the smaller ones are dying out because they can't provide stuff anymore. And society, even though we're growing in population, so that's how some of them are surviving, but society doesn't feel as obligated to, like, I need to support my church. That there's lots of other things that they have money to go to, and they're like, I can do my good deeds other places, if they even want to do good deeds. So, and then you get the bigger churches. It's more fun to go to because you know more people. It's more social. And the more people that go to, the better the facilities they have and the better accommodations and all these things. So it is the small country bumpkin churches where you have 30 and 35, like they're dying. And they'll never come back.
And that is part of it. The tax side of things with churches back then, I totally get it.
Right.
Like, you wanted the church to thrive. You wanted the church. But
you thought, not to interrupt you, but like they're going to use this money for a good cause. Because the preacher isn't lining his pockets with it. Joel Osteen, he's lining a lot of his pockets.
I mean, this church is large. Have you ever seen an actual, like, scaled out picture? It is unreal.
It's insane.
I guess at some point, a church gets to a point where they're big enough that it's no longer tax free. It almost becomes tax avoidance or tax evasion. And I know, and I know legally it's not, but essentially it is.
No,
like
I know what you mean.
in the scale of it. So I don't know. So interesting. Can you imagine though you did radio? I mean, that phone call is incredible. You just end up talking to some random plumber and he just starts telling you a story about Joel Osteen's megachurch and finding money in the wall.
I mean, the speculation. While I'm taking this call, I'm not sure I believe it. And that's really one of the things of, are we going to put this guy on the air who's making this claim? Whoever the call screener is, assuming it was a big enough station of a call screener, like that call screener had to work.
Okay.
But if they just threw him live on the air and they're like, here, you run with it, who knows?
I've read two different stories about it. The one story, they don't really go into detail about the radio interview itself. But the other story, they make it sound as if this just came up, like, randomly. They made it sound as if, like, Mark, what do you do for a living? And the guy was like, I'm a plumber. And they're like, oh, tell us your craziest plumbing story. They made it seem as if this
so
was
the guy didn't call in, like, you'll never guess what happened.
That's how the first story makes it sound. The first story makes it sound as if they kind of, like, stumbled upon this story. So I don't know. That's how the Telegraph story made it sound.
Huh.
Yeah, interesting. Pretty crazy. We can talk about the Columbia professor. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that or not. We can talk about the Maxwell trial. We can talk about the Holmes trial.
Give me that. What's the Columbia professor story?
The Columbia professor story was the drama professor.
Yes. Oh, it was at Columbia.
Is that Columbia?
Wait, I thought you said, it's Coastal Carolina.
Coastal Carolina University. I apologize. Columbia was the Spader story. That's my fault. Apologies to Columbia University if anybody's watching. So there is a university professor at Coastal Carolina. Here is the 30-second story, and then we'll start to dive into the logistics of it. The main story is not the actual debate side of this, so stay with me. There was a black student at Coastal Carolina University who told a drama teacher that she wanted to connect with students of her race. So the teacher drew up a list of names for her to connect with.
Right.
And they put this list on the whiteboard.
Right.
After the meeting, when they left, nobody erased the names on the whiteboard. So when students then saw the list later on the whiteboard, they became concerned because they noticed that there was something very in common with all the names.
Because it was all minority kids on the list.
Yes. So they became concerned of, like, what's going on here. So there was an investigation done by professors on campus, by the university itself at Coastal Carolina. They came out and basically said, like, there was no wrongdoing. The professor was actually trying to help the student link up with people of their own race and feel more comfortable at the university. The 62-year-old white drama professor, their exact quote when asked about the situation afterwards was, "Sorry, but I don't think it's a big deal. I'm just sad people get their feelings hurt so easily, and they think they're going into theater," with a question mark. To end this part, after the investigation was over, the students took more, what's the word I'm looking for? Offense to the quote from the actual professor itself than the incident that had already been investigated. The students are now posting stuff all over campus. They're posting stuff on the professor's door, on the classroom door, all over the arts institution, asking for the professor to be let go.
Okay, so let's, so again, back to the beginning, black student talking to a white professor, and the black student tells the white professor, I want to connect with other kids who are non-white. So the professor made a list of the ones that the professor knew off the top of their head, wrote them on the whiteboard.
Yes.
So nothing sinister about this has happened. There's nothing sinister yet.
No.
So then the kids come in, they find out, they ask, why is that list there? The professor tells them the reason, there's investigation, whatever. So go back, can you read the quote again from the professor?
So the professor's quote after the investigation was, "Sorry, but I don't think it's a big deal. I'm just sad people get their feelings hurt so easily, and they think they are going into theater."
Okay, so read it again and stop after the word easily.
"Sorry, but I don't think it's a big deal. I'm just sad people get their feelings hurt so easily."
I totally agree with that.
Sure.
He did nothing wrong. He was trying to help a student. There was nothing racist about it. And he makes his statement that, yes, I'm sorry that people get their feelings hurt so easily. The last sentence the sentence that we didn't get to yet, which
Sure.
read, is a dig, and this is what fired them up. Can you reread the last sentence?
The last one was, and they think they're going into theater.
That's it. Because what he said is, you people aren't tough enough to do this. If this bothers you, if you are this worked up, that the two of us made a list, and basically this kid said to me, can you name me a bunch of non-white students? And I'm like, sure. There's Jenny, there's Sally. I made the whole list. If that bothers you this much, then you have no shot of going into theater because you're not tough enough, you're not thick-skinned enough, you can't bounce back enough. This business is brutal, and you don't have what it takes. And they just went and whimpered and said, he said something mean about me. And that's the problem.
I don't disagree with you.
Good.
I think the part, I'm still trying to find the part that is either untrue or the part that is truly offensive. And in this case, I don't see it.
I don't see anything racist either.
And a lot of times when you and I talk about stuff like this, like we disagree on this more times than not.
It's because you're wrong a lot.
That's what it is. But usually there's a generation gap where like you and I won't see perfectly eye to eye on this stuff. I think I don't know if there's a gap this time between you and I. I don't really see that this is going to.
And let me clarify this: the generation gap is your nice way of saying that I'm really old.
You're old now. The part of this story that I just agree with full-heartedly, not just the fact that people get their feelings hurt. There is a sense now of like there's like the nosiness or what we believe is our business now, and I get it for races or cultures that are disenfranchised, for people who have never been given a fair shot. I understand. Like, I get it. I get the sentiment that something needs to be done in circumstances where it's appropriate. But now there's like this nosiness of like we're digging our nose into all this stuff. And maybe some of this is like hypocritical because you and I come on here and like we debate this stuff all the time. That's what we do. But there is a sense like I cannot express to you how many times like I don't know if the generations before them would have even noticed the names on the board. Like, you know what I'm like, there are people that would go about their life and they're so ingrained in their passion or what they're doing or what they're focused on that the idea of like a list of names, it just wouldn't have even crossed their radar. Like, I'm busy doing this. Like, I'm focused here. I'm doing this. There's a sense now, like, kids are so hyper-focused, and some of it is phones and social media and like just very little things go through the cracks anymore. But there is this idea, like this hyper-focused mentality has almost become a nosiness in a way. Well, and again, I'm 100% being hypocritical right now because like I get on here and I have to find topics and I have to find things to talk about and I have to dig into them. So I'm not, I'm looking in the mirror as I say this, but I am the older part of these generations where like we've kind of grown up in that environment, if that makes sense.
I think there's an aspect too where society feels like they need to be up in arms. And if somebody says something that they disagree with, that person should be fired, or that person. I mean, let's go back to this. This is an old white professor. Didn't we say the professor was 60-something years old?
62, I believe.
62-year-old white professor who was obviously seemed approachable enough, connectable enough, non-racist enough that this young black student approached this old white professor to ask basically for help in connecting with other students like the young student. So if you thought this professor was a prick, if you thought the professor was racist, then this is the last person that this young black student is going to ask for help. This is so of all the people at Coastal Carolina, and I don't know how big the theater department is or whatever, but this is the person that this young student went to ask for help. So that would give a clue that at least this person was not hated before this. Actually, this professor was probably well liked, at least by a certain group.
Sure.
So, and then to turn around and it just, I don't know. Like, we have to be offended by this. We have to be offended by that. And you don't. You just have, okay, I understand. Maybe it wasn't properly done. Maybe it wasn't.
Can I say this though? Because, and this is just a little bit of devil's advocate. I think we've always been offended. Like, I find it hard to believe that your generation and my generation and the generations below me or even above you, that teachers didn't upset them or that they didn't disagree with authority or that they didn't. I think we've always been offended or feelings hurt or whatever else. The difference now is the willingness to speak out, the willingness to go against them. I'm sure that there have been college students that feel the way these students feel, but there was never an outcry. There was never a Twitter to get the ball rolling. How many people would have plastered an professor's office door with these notes? And so I don't think it's a difference in feelings. I feel like it's a difference now in people's willingness to speak up, whether they're right or wrong. Like there's just much more of a willingness to say, like, I disagree with this and I'm gonna put my foot down and I'm gonna do this.
Well, I think it's more, I think there's an entitlement now that society has that's like, I think you said something that I don't like, so you should be fired.
Can I take it a step further?
Yes.
I think there's an entitlement now that has streamed down that always existed. Because the entitlement used to be, I am older than you, shut up and do what I tell you to do. And that's fair. And that entitlement has rolled down the hill where it now spreads. Being old doesn't mean entitlement. Really, anybody can be entitled now. And that didn't always exist in society. There was a sense like if you were bold or you were out of your mind to do what some people do now at the age of like 14, 15, all the way up to like 25.
I get it. And this goes through society. Like if you have different beliefs than me, then you're wrong. You should be fired. You should, they should be replaced. The world has to think like me. And that is that's how politics are now. That is, you find very few people that have, cross aisle discussions.
Sure.
And, it was what Trump did for 4 years. You either agreed with Trump or you were an idiot. And that is how our society has gone. You either see with me and agree with my opinion, or you're obviously stupid.
Sure.
And now it goes to a step further. This person said something that bothered me, so they should lose their job. And it's insane.
So
let me finish. He's probably right with the sentence of that these kids are too soft to make it.
And we just disagree with that.
We just joked about that yesterday at basketball practice, that we have raised a soft generation, and it's not their fault, it's our fault. Like they're better at technology than we are, and we need their help. So it's a good thing we were nice to them. But we were raised much tougher than the generation that's there now.
Joe says, and maybe here is where Mark reminds Jeff there was a decade called the 60s. How old were you in the 60s?
I missed them. I was born in 71.
So maybe Joe can. How old's Joe? Joe doesn't know.
Joe's got to be mine. Joe doesn't know the 60s.
Joe doesn't know the 60s.
He's read
Come
about
on,
him.
Joe.
He's read about them.
Joe, tell me about the 60s real quick. Tell me what I'm missing. I clearly missed the 60s.
I don't get the
I'm assuming it has something to do with me saying that this generation's much more entitled or willing to go against the grain. And I'm assuming
that's a good point.
In the 60s.
Yeah, the teenagers. Yeah,
yes, I'm assuming that there was a generation in the 60s that was very similar or did similar.
The hippies of the yeah, Joe, you're right with that. I'll give you that.
He says the counterculture. So there you go.
Yeah.
Do you think? I mean, I'm not a 60s specialist at all. I'm trying to think like what would be. How comparable would the 60s be to today as far as the way the youth responds to like authority or the way youth views elders?
I just think that and this would be interesting to talk to someone who's lived above that. I think the youth just feels like they have a voice and they don't have to just sit down. As you said, the older people like sit down and shut up because I'm old and you're not, and you'll do what I say. Mm-hmm. And I think both generations we're like, I don't have to. You're not that smart. You're not smarter than I am, and I'll do what I want. And I think in many ways, the 60s kids were smarter than the old people because the 50s, like it was very regimented and like you had to like life fit in this normal box. And the artists of the 60s and we're just like, no, it's not about this. It's about peace and love and all the other stuff. Mm-hmm. And nowadays, it's the technology. The kids are like, if you're so much smarter than me, how come you don't know how all this stuff works?
Mhm.
I can do this, and I can buy this online, and I can read this, and I can do this, and you can't. So if you're smarter than me, why can I do it and you can't? So I think there probably is a very good connection there. Well done, Joe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So to end it, Joe said, Mark and I studied the 60s and current events. Jeff must have been absent that day in ancient history. So that's probably a little bit of truth to that. I'm not that much old or younger than you.
Yes, you are.
You think so?
Oh, my God.
I don't think I'm that much younger than you. Okay, I want to talk about the Maxwell trial because it is.
Yes, because I need my daily update.
You need your daily update.
Did they declare mistrial yet?
They did not declare mistrial. There is, so some of, depending on what you read, if you read the AP, stuff like that, they're still very, very poignant. This is what's happening. They're not really giving their set opinion of how the trial is going. If you read some of the other ones, they believe that the prosecution has kind of fumbled the ball here in the early going. I even used a football reference to get you to look away from your phone. And
I just got a message from out front, and I thought it was important.
Is it breaking news?
No.
Okay. So they believe the prosecution has begun to fumble the football a little bit. Their opening statement was less than 25 minutes, which it's the first time that's kind of being reported, which is significantly short.
It should have been 2 hours.
Minimum, it probably should have been 2 hours. So immediately from the get-go, they didn't really make, what they're arguing is they didn't really leave their thumbprint on the jury from the very beginning. They said it's almost felt as if the defendants are controlling running the show. Yes, they're controlling the tempo. They're dominating. In football, you have time of possession. They said the defendants are really controlling time of possession here, and it's not even close. So that is obviously not a great part of this trial that's being released now. The other part that's being included as well, the government attorneys had intended to lead on powerful testimony. This is from World News Telegraph. On powerful testimony from the first accuser, the one that was the actress, Jane is what she's being referred to. The jury selection had run over in the morning session, and they didn't want her to be interrupted by an adjournment. So essentially what had happened was they passed on their first run and handed it over to the defendant because they didn't want to call the actress up first and then have her interrupted. They wanted her to be able to go straight through with the jury. And they said that also has allotted the defense more time as well. Okay. So they're saying, basically what they're saying is time of possession, who's actually running the show. They said the prosecution early on has fumbled this case.
Because when you watch, and I'm not being sarcastic at all, I mean this 100%. When we watch legal shows, whether it's a real court drama or whether it's a TV show, whatever, when the one side speaks, we're like, oh, they have a good point. And then the other guy speaks, and we're like, oh, they have a good point too. And it is so easy to go back and forth. So if one side says 10 sentences and one side says 80 sentences, correct, you're like, wow, they made 80 good points to there. And it just seems like, I'm with you. I'm with you.
So a seasoned New York prosecutor who is there says, and quote, "I've never seen such a short opening statement in a criminal case in all my career. I'm not really sure what they're doing."
Yikes.
So now again, the case may be damning enough that the actual strategy behind some of this may not matter, but I would like to think it does. So this is rough. The other thing that keeps happening, so far they've brought up the pilot, they brought up the first witness, and they have brought up a housekeeper. All three of them have said so far that they've seen no actual sexual activity done outside of the witness saying what happened to herself. So you would hope that the pilot and the housekeeper at some point would have said, yes, I saw this mistreatment. I saw this sexual activity, anything that is just actual visual testimony. And so far, the only thing that they have really been able to testify to is that they have seen underage women on the facility. That's it. They haven't actually been able to say, I saw this person doing this with this person.
But is that, and I get it, that would certainly make it better.
Yes.
But if they're I mean, now I'm picturing like the old Western movies when you're in the brothel where you're like, here's the guy, here's the girl. They go in the room and they shut the door. Is it that surprising that the pilot wasn't there, or that I
agree with you exactly what you're saying, because your point you brought up the other day was, if you're the pilot, like, you're probably not even allowed in the back of the plane.
Right.
Like, you're probably not even allowed, like, do you even get off the plane when they land on the island? Like, those types. The housekeeper portrayed a situation where it was basically like, you don't see anything and you don't say anything. The housekeeper said when he testified, it was actually a he testified that Maxwell told him, do not look at Jeffrey Epstein in the eye. You do not speak to him. You do not look at him. Like, you do not exist around Jeffrey Epstein. She referred to herself as the lady of the house, meaning that any issues or anything that happened,
she dealt with.
You were to refer to her. Now, he said you would see topless people at the pool. He said he saw Jeffrey Epstein getting numerous massages from numerous people at different times. So it certainly painted the environment, but there was no actual evidence of actual physical misdoing. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, but it's like, I mean, when you go down to sexual assault cases, it's not about witnesses that saw it. So I know it would help the case. I'm not sure it necessarily hurts the case.
I don't disagree with you. To me,
because unless it's like Eyes Wide Shut and it was a party,
yes,
then
why would
no one's going to see it?
Right? Why would anybody see it?
Right.
The other part of this that's interesting, and this is speculation that somebody was there. It's the same seasoned prosecutor that gave the statement. He wonders. He made a phrase. I don't have it up here right now, so I'm paraphrasing. But at one point, he had said he's curious if the prosecution now is worried to bring up the next three witnesses because of how poorly the first witness went. So the first witness, there was this idea again, her acting career, playing the parts that she did, how she was never able to actually say she saw anybody sexually abused, all of these things. There's this idea now of, if she was the strongest witness, right? She was a strong enough witness that they didn't want her interrupted. Like, right. And so now there's this thought of, do you bring up, I'm sure they will, like, they're not going to have any choice.
They can't quit. Right.
But they wondered if they brought up the pilot first because they didn't want the first witness interrupted. And then after the first witness, now you bring in the housekeeper instead of just pounding the jury with like witness testimony, right? So there's this belief that they may be worried about how to actually handle these four girls and their time on the stand. Yeah. It's not a home run.
They have not exploded out of the starting block.
It is not. And I believe the lead person for the prosecution is remember Comey, who used to run the FBI?
Yes.
I believe it is his daughter who is leading the prosecution. I don't know her background or anything like that. I do want to look up to it because it was the first time I saw her name brought up again this morning. And I thought I actually should look into who she is and everything else. Pretty sure it's Comey's daughter. I don't know her experience. I don't know exactly how seasoned she is. Is that a fair way to put it? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to dive into that and kind of see. But right now it's not going as well as you might have hoped if you were against Jeffrey Epstein.
You know who they should have? And I can't think of his name. Who was the guy he's on the blacklist now?
Okay.
James Spader. Did you ever watch Boston Legal?
No, I don't think I did.
Denny Crane, William Shatner.
I know the show that you're referring to.
James Spader was the greatest attorney in American history.
Okay.
I can't remember his name. Denny Crane was the guy that William Shatner played. Crane, Poole, and Schmidt.
Okay.
And I can't remember who, but James Spader was awesome. But anyway, be that as it may. You're reading something.
I am reading something. Ken says, I'm trying to gauge because I want to respond. Hey guys, girls 14 to 17 flown to an island on a private plane. They were not flown there to play with Barbies, and there were not any relatives to any of them. I totally agree with you, Ken. One of the main issues with the pilot's testimony is that every time he said that he saw an underage girl on the plane,
he
claimed that they said that the person standing next to them or somebody with them was their guardian or their parent.
Oh, listen, what's his name? Ken.
Yeah.
They're guilty.
There's 100%
no doubt
guilty.
about it.
Part of the reason I keep bringing this up every day, and he knows, it's the biggest trial. They're guilty. More people than just Jeffrey Epstein and Maxwell need to go to jail. That's part of the reason we keep bringing this up. The issue now, and my fear, is that this is not going the way that they had hoped from a prosecution side.
No. And they only had 2 years to get ready.
Yeah.
And a mini series
and a
cheat off
of. There's also, part of the other thing too is, like, as a pilot, the last thing you want him to say is that he never saw an underage kid without a guardian or a parent, because it almost implies, how could any of this other stuff, like a parent would never allow any of this stuff to happen. A guardian would never allow any of this stuff to happen. So it just seeds into the jury's doubts.
Right.
You know, whether it's for half a second or half a minute, just to get the wheels turning, essentially, is what it does.
Right.
So it's not going well, Ken. We agree with you. They are guilty. We are hoping for it to be a guilty verdict. We'll see.
And again, and I think I've said this every day, I think they'll throw the book at her and they'll let everyone else walk.
Which would be pretty brutal as well. That would be tough to stomach with.
Well, now that I'm thinking out loud, if they throw the book at her and say she was guilty of organizing sex between underage girls and all these adult men, wouldn't they then be obligated to go after the adult men?
I would assume.
So maybe they let her off and say, well, she wasn't guilty. We can't prove that she was guilty.
She's got to be.
And then all these other people aren't guilty, because if she's guilty, then there's a lot of, who are all the other guys that now sexually assaulted these underage girls?
Sure.
Unless they come in and claim they did not know the girls were underage.
Sure.
And I don't think, is that a defense? I don't think that's a defense.
I don't think it can be a defense. If she's found guilty, and again, some of the things, the one thing that is for sure that these witnesses have testified is that they were sexually abused by Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. The planes and the trips and the guardians and the other people involved, that is kind of like the outer layer of everything, because these four people are going to go up on the stand and they're going to say, I was sexually abused, here's what happened, and the defense isn't going to have much for that.
When you say the guardians, we're not talking about the Cleveland baseball team, just to be clear.
The Cleveland baseball.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Any other dad jokes before we move on?
I thought that was
good. The last one, and I brought this up.
I was proud of that one. I thought that was very clever.
Sad. Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes recently took the stand in her own defense in her criminal fraud trial. Her tearful appearance didn't change the legal case against her. 10-second synopsis. Theranos was supposed to be the company that you could prick your finger, they would take the blood sample, and they would be able to test you for all of these things in like 5 minutes.
Right.
And you'd get the results. Basically, the whole thing
was a sham.
It was a sham. It was a fraud. She lied to investors. Millions of dollars kind of included in this. She was called to the stand. Her trial has been going on, I believe, for weeks now. I want to say it's been at least 3 or 4 weeks. Her trial has been underway. She actually was called up to the stand unexpectedly. No one at this point in the trial, they kind of assumed Elizabeth Holmes would not go up to the stand. Psychologically, I told you, she is trying to play a defense card of her lover, who also worked for the company, that her lover convinced her to do these things and say these things. So her trial just took a severe turn yesterday, because there is kind of like I'm not guilty, I didn't do these things. Then she takes a stand, but if I did, he made me do it.
It wasn't my fault. He made me do it.
And so I don't even, as a jury, as a prosecution, as a defense, I don't even know where this trial goes from here, because of that 180 kind of spin of, for 3 weeks, I didn't do it. And then you take the stand and say, he made me do it. And I don't even know where it goes.
So that sounds like that the defense, because all you need is reasonable doubt. So they're going to throw everything against the wall and see what sticks and hope they get reasonable doubt somewhere.
Yes. Yeah,
So
they're gonna have to.
they're playing their greatest hits album, and hopefully you like one of the tunes makes you dance.
Something, one or the other. So that'll be interesting as well. See if Elizabeth Holmes, if it works.
She is as guilty as Epstein and what's her name, Maxwell.
Yes,
It just in a different light.
Just in a different light.
They are both very, very guilty.
So now we have two. I would argue there's two significant trials right now where the prosecution has a very, what I would argue would be open and shut cases, and the prosecution has their hands full.
Yeah, it looks like they're guilty for all the world to see that they're guilty, and now they are struggling.
Yes, in the court of law. And again, it doesn't mean the jury, maybe it all depended on the jury. Are they going along with it? Are they buying what's being sold? But from just when you listen to other people talk about it that have, prosecutors that are seasoned, that have been around, and you read some of this stuff, it just sounds like the prosecutions are in tight spots. Like they're dealing with things that does not make their job easy.
It's too bad we weren't on the Maxwell jury.
You think so? I would have been awful. I would have been so bad at it.
Why?
I think I would have been too. There's an emotional disconnect with some of this stuff that you almost have to be able to flip the switch on and off. I don't know if I would have been able to flip the switch on and off.
You would have got to the right verdict, though.
You think so?
What is the right verdict?
It's guilty.
Exactly. You're already there. So that makes you perfect.
I need the jury to get there.
And that's why if you were on the jury, you would be in the jury room and be like, "Come on, people, seriously."
Yeah, no,
He's guilty.
I'm sure there will be people on the jury like that. I have no.
I could see that the jury's hung.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see that she walks.
Yeah.
That's what I
see.
I don't know. I think I still think she's guilty unless there's some undue outside influence that doesn't want it to go further.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. We're going to keep you posted. I see less and less of it every day. It actually is. It's actually gotten less instead of bigger. So see what happens.
There you go.
All right. Anything else before the weekend?
If Michigan loses,
okay,
there will be no Big Ten team in the Final Four.
Okay.
It is a crazy because if Georgia beats Alabama, doors are open. Cincinnati just needs to win and they're in. Does Cincinnati blow it? They've got this far. I think Cincinnati wins and they're in.
Sure.
And this is the one. It'll be the first time ever, and everyone's been lobbying for it. They've had everything fall in their way. All they need to do is win their conference championship, and they're in.
Sure.
If Notre Dame just needs a little bit of help now that they have no coach and a coach that was unlikable.
Time out. So can we talk about that very quickly?
Sure.
There's one scenario that everybody in the country should be rooting for. And that is that Notre Dame wins the national championship.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
And I know there are people out there who vehemently dislike Notre Dame, and I understand that. But Notre Dame winning the national championship would be one of the greatest sports stories of all time.
And Notre Dame has never had this many fans as they do now. And they're the people who are just the blatantly, they're almost bigoted against Notre Dame. That they're like, I want to root for him, but I can't. But all of us normal people in the middle who weren't really Notre Dame fans to begin with, we are now.
Yeah.
And we want Notre Dame to get in, and we want them to win. This is before your time because you're just a kid. Do you remember the first time Michigan won the national championship in basketball when Steve Fisher quit? Do you know this story? I was in high school. And who was the guy who stepped in for him? Steve Fisher was the head coach.
Was this not long ago?
89.
Okay.
Rice. Glenn Rice. They right before the tournament, he took a job with I think Arizona State.
Okay.
And he said, I'll coach the team through the tournament, and then I'm going to Arizona State.
Right.
And the school is like, no, thank you. If you're leaving, you leave now. And they promoted the assistant coach to head coach, and they won the national title.
Mm-hmm.
Rice. What was his name? Glenn Rice.
But it wasn't like mid-season or anything.
No, it's right before the tournament.
Oh, it was right before the tournament?
Right before the tournament. He's like, I'll take the job, but I'll finish out the year. And Michigan said, thanks, but no thanks. If you're leaving us, leave now.
Okay.
And they won the national title. So it's similar. You have to be old
so
like
me.
the
closest thing to
but,
this.
But it's not Notre Dame football. Like Michigan when it was a big deal, and don't get me wrong.
Sure.
I can't remember the coach because then the coach was there for a while. Steve Fisher's a guy that left.
Was he there through the Fab Four? or Fab Five. Sorry.
Who coached the Fab Five?
I thought it was Steve Fisher.
I thought Steve Fisher left. Do I have the wrong guy?
I thought Steve Fisher coached the Fab Five.
Then maybe Steve Fisher's the guy that stayed.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Steve Fisher left.
I mean, if only we had computers that had answers.
Yeah, well, I'll just babble here for a couple minutes. But so
do you need help with that? Or are you gonna? No,
I'll be all right.
Okay.
So all we need. So the big one too is Iowa, because Iowa's been the underachiever, and then this is Michigan. It is just like set up. The world is waiting for Harbaugh to fall on his face again because he's been there. He's always been there. He could never.
Steve Fisher took the job.
Who left then?
I don't know, but Steve Fisher was a Michigan assistant from 1982 to 1989, and then he was the head coach from 89 to 97. And then he was at San Diego State he's been at San Diego.
He's at San Diego State now.
No, he's not there anymore.
Well, yes.
He was there for like 20 years almost.
Who, the guy who left, I know he went to Arizona State. Who was the Michigan coach before that?
I didn't even know that they won the national championship before the Fab Five. It actually kind of takes away from the Fab Five story.
No, the Fab Five story is great.
I didn't say the Fab Five story wasn't great.
You just said it took away from it.
It takes away from it. It absolutely does.
Bro.
It does. You're telling me that a team 3 years?
But they were all freshmen.
Listen to what I am saying to you. You're telling me that a team 3 years before the Fab Five showed up won the national championship at that school. Okay. So did the Fab Five win the national championship? Okay. So all I'm saying is
they lost in the championship.
All I'm saying is
with
knowing
5 18-year-olds.
Yeah, to North Carolina. All I'm saying is knowing that now it depletes the Fab Five story a little bit. This wasn't like a school starving for whatever. Like these dudes that decided to go to Michigan, they had just won a national championship.
No, I get that.
Okay.
The other thing that makes the Fab Five it's the second greatest nickname of a college basketball team ever.
Okay.
The Fab Five was brilliant.
Douglas.
Bill Frieder, that's it. Thank you. Bill Frieder.
You're so funny. You like Bill Frieder, like you're gonna take 50% of the credit.
No. But
you get all the credit, Douglas.
No,
Douglas, the credit is yours.
Just clicked it. That was it. He's right. Bill Frieder.
And then he says Fisher led the team to the NCAA championship that year.
The Fab Five is just such a great nickname. Next to Phi Slamma Jamma, the Fab Five is the second. If it was just, they have these 5 freshmen and it would have been cool, but it wouldn't have been nearly as cool as the Fab Five. That made it larger than life.
Here's what I'm saying to you. When they tell the story of the Fab Five, they very rarely mention the national championship the year or two before. And that's cool. I get that. I'm just saying it does take away from the story a little bit. Like 30 years removed now, it takes away from the story a smidge. That's all. It does. I had gone through this entire time not realizing Michigan had just won the national championship before they showed up.
And I get that. Okay.
That's all.
Okay.
It's still super cool. The documentary is amazing. I love Jalen Rose. Like it's still
Jalen Rose is great.
He's fantastic. It's still a really cool.
Did you ever hear him tell the story how he won a card playing dice?
Yeah, I actually have heard that story.
That is, when him telling stories about being poor college kids, as the Fab Five, and they were broke.
Yeah.
And he's like, the only reason I had a car, I won at the dice game.
Yeah.
Like it is.
No, it's crazy.
Jalen Rose is a great. For a basketball commentator, he will always be underrated in my book. Yeah. I like Jalen Rose.
You know, this is funny because Joe brings up was the best name Phi Slamma Jamma.
Yes, it was Phi Slamma Jamma.
You know what's funny? I could care less about player and team nicknames.
Yes,
and I feel like your generation, that was huge.
No.
What was the nickname? What did you call the team?
It wasn't, but Phi Slamma Jamma was just so.
I agree. It was really cool. Like if I'm trying to think of,
and
like
it
an
just
example.
Naturally came up.
Think of the teams just recently. Like Duke had the Zion team with Barrett and everything else. It never crossed anyone's mind to give them a nickname.
But it didn't.
It wasn't even like a thing.
That's because it just happens organically. Like there are great defenses.
Name the last college basketball team with a nickname.
Phi Slamma Jamma. No, the Fab Five. But no, like there are great NFL defenses every year. Mm-hmm. But when the Seattle Seahawks had the Legion of Boom, it just took it to another level because they are the Legion of Boom. Yes. And so you don't know this, but as a cartoon when I was a kid, the bad guys were the Legion of Doom.
Yes.
So that was who the superheroes fought against.
And
it was brilliant.
Yes. You're defending how cool and brilliant it was. I think it's cool and brilliant. I am jealous. I am expressing to you, we don't even think about it. No, I'm not.
I thought you were taking a shot at my generation.
No, not at all. I think it's awesome. But what I'm saying is, like, I'm jealous because, like, we have these teams now and, like, we don't even think to name them. Like, it doesn't even cross our mind. Like, that great Duke team that just came through, like Gonzaga this year, like, you don't even think to name these teams.
Well, I think
they're just Gonzaga.
I saw a documentary about that. I think Phi Slamma Jamma came from like a University of Houston
school paper.
And a guy was like, well, it's like a fraternity. It's bad. Right. How about Phi Slamma Jamma? And I think some 20-year-old came up with it. Yeah. And then it just ran. And that's what makes it great. Like, that's how these things. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the Fab Five, and it's so simple. The Fab Five, but they were all freshmen. Because when Durant, I think Durant's second year at Texas, he took him to the Elite Eight. Didn't Durant play 2 years at Texas? And I think it was him and 4 freshmen, I think. But it wasn't 5.
No, I get it.
And it was, so anyway, but yes, the nicknames are great. Legion of Boom is great. And I'm not a Seahawks fan. I hate the Seahawks. But
who were the Super Friends? Weren't the Super Friends? Well, I might have Super Friends.
Wonder Twin Powers activate.
Who was that?
Zan and Jaina. Okay. It was Jane, shape of an eagle, form of a bucket of water. One of them always had to be some sort of water.
Okay.
And then one was kind of like an animal. But yeah, if you don't know Wonder Twin Powers, buddy, you are.
I know. I missed out on that.
You did.
But see, like, that's those names.
But you can do TikTok and we can't.
I can't. But what I'm saying, like, those names should mean something. Like, I'm trying to think of a good example right now. Like, if you, like, Gonzaga basketball right now, right? Like, they have the Timmy kid and they have Holmgren. Like, you would never, like, we wouldn't just start calling them the Twin Towers. Like, we just don't do that anymore.
Because that
it's not a thing.
Because that was Samson and Olajuwon.
It was also Tim Duncan and David Robinson.
No. Whoa. It was Samson and Olajuwon. They were the Twin Towers.
We need to get off of this because you keep trying to explain to me how awesome it was. I know it was awesome.
No, you just have the wrong one. You can't steal it. There's only one Twin Towers.
You're missing it. I'm trying to make a point. They should have a nickname. You're distracting us from coming up with the answer. What should their nickname be?
But see, no, here's the thing. But
it's organic.
It's hard. It's organic.
It's organic. It just happens. So you're telling me for 10 years we just organically haven't come up with something?
No.
Are we that awful?
Like the Chicago Bears in the 80s were the monsters of the Midway.
I know.
And since the monsters of the Midway, what have we had? We had the Legion of Boom. What else? The Steel Curtain of the 70s. In the last 50 years in the NFL, we've had like 4 good nicknames. They just don't pop up every day. The last great one, Phi Slamma Jamma, was in the 80s. The Fab Five was in the 90s.
They popped up a lot in the 90s and 80s.
They just don't pop up that much. It's harder. It's harder than you think.
In the 90s and 80s.
It's harder than you think.
So you think in just 30 years, it's just hard. There must be a reason we don't do it anymore. Maybe it wasn't as cool as you think.
No, it's harder than you think.
Maybe it wasn't as cool as you think.
It's harder than you think. McGuire and Canseco were the Bash brothers. Mm-hmm. They just, who's the next? What's next? It's just hard. It's just hard.
I don't know.
It's harder than you think.
I don't know.
Murderer's Row. How about that for a baseball nickname? The greatest nickname in baseball history. Murderer's Row. Mm-hmm. And that was in like the 20s. It's been 100 years. But how do you come up with a better nickname than when you've got a lineup that everyone just hits home runs? They're Murderer's Row. How do you come up with something better than that?
I'm over it.
It's hard.
Anything else?
Phi Slamma Jamma. Woo! And they lost too. Phi Slamma Jamma didn't even win. Neither did the Fab Five. They lost in the finals.
I know, which is another thing we could dive into.
That's awful. I can remember, this is honest to God, I can remember laying in bed listening because my parents were mean and wouldn't let me watch. And Houston was losing. They're falling apart. And Olajuwon was in foul trouble. And Larry Mishaw was single-handedly trying to keep them in the game. I can remember listening to this on my radio in bed. When's the last time you listened to a game on your radio in bed?
Never.
I know. That shows how young you are. There's an old generation that can relate to me right now, and you can't.
But it's not even about relating. It's that you feel like you have to defend something, and I'm not defending it. What I'm saying
I'm just saying how sad it was because I was rooting for Phi Slamma Jamma.
Got it. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show today. I hope you sincerely enjoyed it. We love bringing this to you. The next 3 weeks, we're going to be able to do the holiday countdown, so get ready for that. Thank you to Weiss Markets, and be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news.
I don't think I've ever live. I hear your voice all the time saying, would you just please shut up?
Yeah.
But I don't think you've ever done it during the broadcast as clearly as right there. You just said, Mark, please stop talking.
Wasn't that the most polite, calm?
It was
no one has ever
It was
told
a
you.
lot politer than most people when they tell me to shut up.
No one has ever told you to shut up.
You did it very kindly. I will say that.
Ever.
Bye, Slamma Jamma.
We'll see you next Monday. I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina.